There is an event called the Podcast Movement. I had vaguely heard of it, but I don't really know very much about it. It's some conference where podcasters go and have booths and talk to one another. And since we here at the Daily Wire are one of the largest podcast companies in the world, I think we're number 6 or number 5 or something like that. Obviously, we had a booth at this event. And what do you know? The founding editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, first show on our network, Ben Shapiro, shows up to the podcast movement. Makes sense. One of the most prominent podcasters in the world would show up to the podcast movement at the Daily Wire booth because the Daily Wire is one of the biggest podcast companies. This was a really big deal. The podcast movement tweeted out their heartfelt apology for allowing one of the most prominent podcasters in the world to show up. Take a listen.
Ben Shapiro briefly visited the PM22 Expo. Though he was not registered or expected, we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence.
So do I get to get a picture?
1, 2, 3.
God bless you.
Hey, thank you.
We agreed to sell the Daily Wire a first-time booth based on the company's large presence in podcasting. The weight of that decision is now painfully clear. During event planning, the dangerous nature of the company's messaging was overlooked.
Thank you.
Those of you who called this unacceptable are right. Podcast movement has made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us.
Yeah, thanks for everything you do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you so much for coming. This is huge.
Of course. Thanks a lot.
Truly harrowing. It's amazing that those people survived. The podcast movement is begging for forgiveness. They say, those of you who called it unacceptable are right. In 9 wonderful years growing and celebrating this medium, we've made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us. Please, we take full responsibility. Please, if you have any questions, we're here to talk. I have questions. And furthermore, I do not accept your apology. I don't think that these tweets cover the irreparable harm done by Ben's appearance, and I want monetary reparations for that. That's what I want from the podcast movement. The irony, of course, here about the podcast movement, which is some 2-bit conference, who knows, I don't even know where it is, of them attacking Ben and the Daily Wire, is that we are the podcast movement. We are, not you, not some 2-bit conference, us, the guys who are actually some of the biggest podcasters in the world. Not just the Daily Wire. I think, what are we, number 5 or number 6 on the charts? But it's us, it's Rogan, obviously. There are a few other groups. It's really not just us. But it's a handful of us, okay? We're the ones doing it. And by the way, the big podcasters skew disproportionately to the right, or at least anti-leftist. Joe Rogan's not on the right, but he's not a leftist, that's for sure. This company obviously skews to the right. The reason for that is that the people for years had been prevented from accessing conservative information because of the left-wing gatekeepers in the institutions of the media. And then podcasting comes around, and podcasting is a pirate ship. That's what Adam Carolla calls it. Another guy who skews at least a little bit to the right, who's not a leftist. He was the pioneer of podcasting. And the libs are furious about that. They hate that the conservatives are able to get their message out there in a relatively freer platform. So they're doing everything they can to shut it down, and they make themselves look ridiculous because they're afraid of Ben Shapiro, who is a relatively moderate center-right voice, as mainstream as they possibly come in America, the least intimidating person on earth, who's just a sort of very polite guy who is standing around generously giving of his time to take photos and say hey to people and leave. So it's the way they make it sound. It's as though the guy showed up with an Uzi or something like that.
Hey Michael, love the show. So recently I've had the weirdest phenomena, which is that I will be walking my dog and my baby son, who is super cute, and people will comment on how cute the dog is and like not even acknowledge my son. And it's just like a really weird thing. And I've noticed there are like two types of people. There are people who acknowledge your dog, and there are people who acknowledge your human child. And this also kind of goes hand in hand with me noticing recently that there are a lot of people who are walking their dogs in strollers, like as though it's a child that they're pushing around. Just wonder if this is like a larger trend or maybe just something in my area. I'm not sure. Thanks.
It's a major trend. Dogs are the new kids. It's very sad. It should not be the case. You should not treat your dog as your kid. You can love you should love your dog as your dog. I'm not saying you should be mean to your dog or not get a dog or not have affection for your dog. No, you love your dog. Your dog, in a way, has a soul. It's not a rational soul like a human being has, but a dog has a soul proper to its nature. But a dog is not a kid. And if you treat the dog as a kid, you're only going to end up unhappy. You should, if you can and so desire, you should have a kid. If you can't, a lot of people can't have kids, and you really want a kid, you should consider adopting a kid. And if you don't want any of those things, but you want a dog, you can have a dog. But treat the dog like a dog. Don't put the dog in a little stroller. I have friends of mine who do this. It's really, really sad. You know something has gone wrong in society where we coddle the little puppies and we sort of stop on the street and we say, well, how cute that little puppy is. And then we ignore the kids when we don't kill them in the first place. Yeah, something's going really, really wrong there. Treat the dog like a dog, treat the baby like a baby. I'm glad you like that clip. Now, look, we hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I appreciate that. That's really great that we did it. Now we got to hit 1 billion, 1 trillion, 1 quadrillion. Who knows? Sky's the limit. Ring the bell, subscribe. We'll see you next time.